Right, good evening, everybody. It's 9 o'clock, so I will kick off. Let me just make sure the tech is all working okay. Can you give me a quick why in the chat box? If you can see the chat box, it should be somewhere there and pop out somewhere on your left and or your right, wherever you pop it out to. Yeah, okay, brilliant. You can hear me okay, you can see my screen, that's good. Okay. Okay, that's good. Still some people joining, but brilliant. Excellent. Good to see you all. Hi, Amanda. So, yeah, first I want to welcome everyone to this session tonight. You won't have to look at me all night, don't worry. It's only going to be about 15 minutes. But yeah, I want to welcome you here this evening. And like I say, I don't want to keep you for about 15 minutes. So I'll close down the video and we'll get straight onto the slides to get straight onto the content, okay? So I'll just make sure you can still see my slide deck, I'm hoping. So 10 reasons why you're not an IT contractor yet. So I'm going to be going through 10 reasons. I'll do 3 of the reasons tonight. I'll do 3 tomorrow and then 4 on the final session on Wednesday. So permi paralysis. So what do I mean by that? Well, one of the reasons could be that you're stuck. So maybe you're actually, stuck in your current job. It might be a job where it pays your bills and you're really surviving, but maybe, there's something more you could be doing. Perhaps you really want to, you want to go contracting and, you want to do that, but you've got this sort of permi paralysis, as I call it. You sort of can't move from where you are now. And some of that might be, you may recognize yourself that you've got a bit of a fear there of losing that sort of permanent safe position. So that might be true for you, maybe. The other one, part of permi paralysis, I would say, is you've got this sort of don't rock the boat mentality. And you feel like you sort of can't, you feel like you sort of shouldn't rock the boat. Maybe you feel that you think that you're paid reasonable money, like I was back in the 90s, and maybe the same as some of your close peers. And, you got that sort of inner voice in your head saying, don't be greedy, Dave. And, if you're thinking, what inner voice is, well, it's the one that just said, what inner voices is he talking about? Yeah, we've all got those inner voices inside our heads. And maybe you've got that little bit of negative self-talk going on. So, like I say, inner voices, maybe there's a few sort of mindset issues you recognize that are keeping you stuck where you are. Maybe you have got responsibilities, that's a massive sort of reason why you might stay where you are. That could be responsibilities, to yourself, internally. It could be responsibilities, to your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife, but also to your kids, to your sort of wider family, also things like your mortgage. We've all got those responsibilities, and you really don't want to fail or put those sort of things at risk, and me for one, my family had, real sort of money issues in the past, didn't sort of handle finances and money decisions very well. And that can be sort of brought forward into our current lives. So, we're all like that, really. But one thing is what I recognize is that when I was 24, back when I started contracting, I had fewer responsibilities. There was just me on my own, for example. I had no mortgage, I had no family. And, going contracting to me really did mean more money, more freedom, more time and more confidence. It was like a win-win situation for me. But one thing I definitely recognize as I get older, and through doing the IT Contracting Academy and doing some of these sort of webinars and training courses that I do, is that it's definitely harder as you get older, and the more responsibilities you have. And what you got to sort of recognize, though, is that there's a flip side to that. So the rewards can be greater when you do, go contracting, for example. So, you can have more freedom to enjoy those responsibilities. So that could mean for you, it could mean spending more money on your family, could be, you know, spending more money on your home, you know, even to the extent of paying off your mortgage, for example. But you can enjoy life more, you can take more holidays, you can spend more time with your family, if you want to do that, obviously. You know, provide for them and provide for their future. But are you taking action? Or are you like sort of, you know, Kevin the koala sat there? You know, are you sort of procrastinating all the time? You know, do you have this sort of attitude of one day, someday? You know, do you sort of talk yourself out of it? You know, definitely like I was in the early 1990s. So, you know, recognize also that, you know, lots of people don't even look at this sort of stuff or take the first baby steps. And you know, by being a part of this group, maybe, or signing up for this sort of series of webinars, you know, you're already sort of taking that sort of first step. You're already starting to think about this sort of stuff. But you don't want to be paralyzed like that, not taking action. And, you know, and recognize in your head that you're going to justify it to yourself, you know, about staying put, because that's exactly what I did. You know, you're going to justify staying where you are. And you've got to recognize and take advice that you need to take action of some sort if you want things to change. So the other sort of last sort of point on the perming paralysis sort of slide that I was going to talk about was, you know, are you the sort of person that sort of overthinks things, or are you the sort of person who, you know, who doesn't think outside the box, you know, or maybe you're the sort of person who jumps ahead too fast and starts worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. So, you know, the critical thing I want you to take away from this is that just because you decide to look for contracts, even apply for contracts, even go for interviews, even get offers, doesn't mean you have to follow through on it. Okay, that might sound a bit counterintuitive, but all I want to make sure, you know, lots of people don't even start this process off because they start worrying about something way ahead in the future. So you're not committing to anything at all yet, but you can at least do those steps in between. You can look for jobs, apply, get interviews, even get offers. You can go that far without having to commit. But the crucial thing is if you do those things, then you're going to be in a much better frame of mind to make a sort of more informed choice as to whether contracting really is for you or not. So give me a quick why in the chat box if any of those things there you think may be sort of stopping you or have stopped you in the past, you know. Okay, good stuff. Well, they stopped me. Probably all of them. Good stuff. Right, so, well, the second point I want to cover is genuine sort of contracting concerns, okay? So you might have valid concerns and questions you want to get the answers to. So one of those, the big one that most people have said in the group when I sort of asked them questions before they joined the group, is job security. It's the most sort of obvious one, I think. And lots of people just have job security worries about the idea of going contracting. But again, I would always look at it and say, you know, is permanent work really any better? I don't know if it is. You know, I mean, I've not been a perm person now for 22 years, so I can't say what it's like. I'm only referring back to my couple of perm jobs I've had in my career. But think to yourself, is your perm job any better than the insecurity of going contracting? I'm not sure. And lots of people do question the long-term stability of contracting. And again, I can only speak from, you know, first-hand experience from myself that, you know, I've been fine for the last 22 years. I've had two sort of small periods of time when I've been out of work. So for me, it's been fine. And think about if you're in a perm job, even in a perm job, you can face big challenges. And that could be, for example, team changes with the sort of group that you're working with. It could actually mean role changes. You could get complete different roles that you have to do, and you're sort of forced to do them because you're told what to do in a perm job. And of course, the other extreme is you can face things in a perm job like redundancy. I know loads of people have been made redundant, and I know that is a massively challenging thing to have to go through. And another one that I hadn't even thought about was relocation. Some friends and colleagues that I used to work with, they've sort of been forcibly sort of relocated to different countries even, you know, but definitely different offices. And that can, you know, really sort of upset you, and it's really quite challenging. So another thing to do with job security is people have this notion that you're constantly changing contracts. And again, I think back in the early days when I first started contracting, sort of 94, 95, 96, for example, then that maybe was sort of true. I was probably getting sort of 3-month, 6-month contracts, but I think that was the nature of my work. But generally, I think that you don't continually change contracts really frequently. For me, I get often sort of quite long contracts these days, and lots of my colleagues do. And I've definitely had sort of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year sort of contracts quite frequently in my career. So just be aware those, you know, you don't have to have, you know, 4 3-month contracts per year, for example. And I know people, for example, that have even had contracts for 7 years, 9 years, I think is the record that I know about. The other major one, let me just grab a drink of water. Another big one that people mentioned was this whole notion of no work, no pay. Now, well, that's how it works. Yeah, I mean, that sort of seems obvious to me that, you know, that's how it works. And I think that's sort of, I prefer the sort of fairness of it that way. But the reality is that you earn much more as a contractor. But even as a contractor, I remember in my early contracting days, I worried about having 2 weeks off work because I knew that work was going to slip in those 2 weeks. I was going to lose money for having 2 weeks off. So it was like a double loss, you know, because I was not earning and I was paying for the holidays. So what I did was I took 1 week's holiday instead to reduce the amount of money that I was going to miss out on. So even back in the early days of me contracting, I was very conscious of not earning the money. But I think it comes with experience, and obviously once you build up a funds buffer, you know, but I definitely wouldn't do something like that now, especially with kids, for example, because, you know, time is much more valuable to me. So some people, again, worry about this whole notion of being treated differently. And again, I think years ago, maybe that was the case, maybe a little bit, but not, I've never seen it very much in 22 years. I think the worst that I ever saw was that you had to pay for a Christmas meal, whereas the perm people didn't. And I think one time we had to pay for a Christmas party and the perm people didn't. So all the contractors just didn't go. So it wasn't really a big problem, but there was a slight divide there in the way that the company did treat you. But in the workplace itself, then there wasn't really any difference. And, you know, these days, there's loads and loads of contractors in most places anyway. I've seen a couple of questions come in. I will come back to those, but I'll carry on for the moment, but I'll definitely come back to those. So keep them coming. If you've got a question, yeah, just fire it into the chat box and I'll try and come back to that later. Yeah, so another massive one, probably the biggest one, is this sort of fear of failure. Well, maybe it's just big for me because fear of failure has been a big thing in my life, maybe, but fear of failure. So, but think about, you know, if you're unhappy in a perm job, then if you got really unhappy in a perm job, you would at some point, I think, decide to change to another perm job. Okay, you would get pushed to the point where you would do that. But so why not consider contracting instead? You know, worst case, you could go back to perm work if the contracting thing didn't work out for you. You know, the crucial thing for me anyway is I don't want to have any regrets in life, and it could be the same for you. You know, and trying to go contracting and going contracting and making a real go of it could open up, you know, so many sort of new and different possibilities for your future. You know, maybe in the future, you know, you want to be a consultant, for example, sort of charge higher amounts of money. Maybe you've got sort of entrepreneurial sort of traits, you know, you might want to run your own business in the future, you know, but the crucial thing is if you don't try, then you're never going to know. And, you know, keep banging on about it, but it's like you have to take action. So, but of course, it's fully understandable that you need help and, you know, and support sometimes. We all do. So yeah, give me a one in the chat box if you recognize any of those things. That maybe you were one of the ones who suggested that to me. That's one of your concerns, for example. But I've definitely felt all of those things to some degree. Good stuff. Still here. Some people have gone and watched the football, so that's nice, isn't it? They'd rather watch football than attend this. But I won't keep you long. So if people are interested in the football, they can get back to it. Right, next, actually the final point tonight is being overly optimistic. So it could be worse. So what I mean by that is if you're really that sort of person who's a bit overly positive, maybe, if you could really look at it, you're sort of ignoring reality around you. You're thinking it's not that bad. And like I said before, oh, I should be grateful for what I've got. And there's people in worse situations than me. Yeah, one thing I've thought in the past is, I should be thankful that I have a job, especially coming from my sort of financial troubled background with my family. I should be happy with what I've got. And also, sometimes you might have that view that you've got sort of this sort of loyalty to the company. But, what I'd challenge and ask you is that loyalty reciprocated back to you? Never. Amanda just said never to that question. Yeah, no, I don't think it is reciprocated back to you. That's right. So yeah, another part of this optimistic side of things is just thinking it will get better. But what I mean by that is, it's pretty bad. Okay, so you know it's bad, but you keep trying to be positive. So rather than sort of misguided, just thinking everything's rosy, things are bad, but you seem to have this misplaced faith. It's like a sort of blind optimism. But ultimately, you feel terrible. I've definitely felt like that in the past. And the classic one is, I'm going to get a decent pay rise. And, that could be pay rise, that could be I'm going to get a decent bonus, or I'm going to get that lovely promotion that I've always wanted. Well, for me, I got the same 1% pay rise as everybody else in the company when I was a permie. And there was no bonus, and there was definitely no promotion. And so it didn't work out how I hoped, and so much so that I ended up in court. And, I'll tell you about that another time. I haven't got time in a 15-minute session to tell you that now. They care for me. Do they really? Do they really, really care for you? I mean, even if you sort of boil it down to just working for the money, right? Do you feel valued for the work you're doing? And sometimes in a company you can experience things like sideways moves. You get sort of shoved sideways in a job, in a role. You can get given less responsibility, for example. As I mentioned earlier, you might be sort of forced into relocating to a different part of the country. You could be faced with the ultimate sort of bad one is redundancy, for example. All those things can be really sort of painful that a company can sort of push onto you. And I'm not trying to be overly negative and cynical, because I've seen all of those things through friends and colleagues, and I'm sure you have too. So don't assume that companies do care for you. The crucial thing I want you to take away this evening is you've got to look after yourself and your family's future. So yeah, give me a Y in the chat box if you're still with me. But if you've felt any of those things before. And again, I think I've felt every single one of those things to some degree. So a quick summary, and then I'll go through some of the questions. So permie paralysis, so basically that feeling of being stuck. Then you've got contracting concerns, but they can be valid questions that I definitely felt like back in 1993, 94, that I wanted to get the answer to. I needed to know more. And the final one is that overly optimistic side of things, where you sort of always think the grass is greener where you are, and you don't want to take the risk of doing something else. So that's those points for now. I will just mention that I've got a Facebook page. If you search IT Contractor on Facebook, you can, if you like that page, that will help me grow my reach. I've also got a Facebook group, which you are more than welcome to join. And I basically post all sort of my content, advanced content goes in there faster. Let me just, I'll put that in the chat box for you. So, but if you search IT Contracting Academy on Facebook, you might have already come in via that sort of mechanism to these webinars anyway. But please join that group, and you, if I see sort of contracts or top tips, I'll always put them in there first. Okay, right, well, that's the end of my 3 points. I'm going to do the next 3 tomorrow, I think it is, yeah, tomorrow night. Let me just have a quick look at some of the questions. My main concern is IR35. What's the best way to negotiate the contract to be outside? Well, lots of contracts, most contracts I've had in the past, I don't know, what, 15, 20 years, have all been IR35 friendly. The truth is we don't know what's going to happen with IR35 in the private sector, you know, in the coming months or years, you know, but this argument has raged on for years and years. So be aware that this is not a new thing. So we need to find out if things are going to change with regards to legislation around IR35. But most contracts are IR35 friendly, or they'll be marked as being inside IR35, and therefore you just got to be careful of that. Talk to an accountant, and they will check out the details, and you'll be able to see how that affects you financially. But I've not had to worry about IR35 for a long time. Let me just scroll back. Feel free to shout any more things in there. No problem, Oliver. 1% if you're lucky, Amanda. Yeah. I'm talking 1994 or something like that. People used to get sort of 4, 5, 6% pay rises then. And we were all aiming for sort of to get about 5%, and we got 1%. Stuff. So there's lots of comments. I'm just checking if there's actually any questions. Yeah, I've been in jobs before where not necessarily IR35, but to stop the company themselves falling foul of any sort of legislation or laws, they would often tell you that 2 years, there was like a sort of 24-month rule. I think that sometimes got changed to an 18-month rule. 24 months, they would say, go away, do a contract somewhere else, and then come back to us again. So lots of companies do have different rules in that respect. But again, like I say, I know lots of people have been in contracts 3, 4, 5, 7, 9 years. Just scroll back. Loads of comments. I can't see actually loads of questions. Would perm work be more ideal to build experience? I think I would never say you have to go straight to a contract from, you know, college or whatever you're doing. It's always good to find your feet in a role first. You know, my first job was a programming job. And so I found my feet in programming, and then I went and took another perm job into a sort of more niche area. So my niche is IT monitoring. So I found my sort of passion in that area rather than being a programmer. And it was when I realized I was getting charged out at sort of, you know, 800 quid a day, I thought, hang on a second, there's something more for me here. I can go and maybe go contracting. And I can't go through my whole story here, but I'll do that in the future sometime. And I can explain, you know, how I came to go contracting, for example. But you definitely want to get some skills under your belt from somewhere. Does that help, Satnam? Good stuff. Okay, good stuff. Okay, well, that's it for this evening. I just wanted to keep it, I didn't want to keep you too much longer than 15 minutes. So we're at 24 minutes. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks very much for attending. Cheers, guys. I shall see some of you tomorrow, and people that didn't attend, they'll get a replay link as well. So don't worry if you miss one, you'll get some sort of replay as well. Okay, thanks very much. Cheers, Michael. Thanks for your comments. Good stuff. See you hopefully tomorrow, okay? Thanks. Bye. Good night.